The president said yesterday that paid insurrectionists were behind or involved in the protests in Los Angeles. Does the White House have any more details about who they believe is paying these?
If you look at some of the imagery that we have received from the Department of Homeland Security and ICE and law enforcement who are on the ground, you will see boxes and boxes of very professionalized masks and rioting equipment being dropped off for these protesters. So who is funding these illegal aliens who are coming in with this very professional riot gear? It's a question everyone in this room who cares about truth should be asking.
Everything sort of we've seen so far with the president's response to the LA protests, there is criticism that seems to suggest that the president responded the way he did because it was a deliberate, calculated attempt to sort of shift focus away from his feud with Musk.
That the president responded to the LA riots, condemning the violence to
from Musk.
The president absolutely supports peaceful protests. He does not support violence of any kind.
So if there were peaceful protests on Saturday for the guillotine parade, President Trump would allow that?
Of course the president supports peaceful protests. What a stupid question. And the president, as I just answered, supports the right of Americans to peacefully protest. But that is not the majority of the behavior that we have seen taking place in Los Angeles. And we have seen, as I said, this goes back to what this administration is trying to do and accomplish, and that's enforcing law and order in our nation's communities. And it's removing public safety threats from communities in Los Angeles.
Have not been peaceful. The majority have been violent.
I just read for you the arrest numbers. We've arrested nearly 400 illegal aliens alone. They began. And we've had hundreds of people who have assaulted law enforcement officers. Are you saying that that's appropriate behavior?
No,
Are you
no,
saying
I'm not
that
saying
the
that at all.
president
I'm
shouldn't
just
take
trying
action?
to figure out.
The Democrat. How are you? Good. Good to see you all. What we have seen transpire in Los Angeles, California in recent days is shameful. Left-wing radicals waving foreign flags viciously attacked ICE and Border Patrol agents as well as Los Angeles police officers. These criminals injured police, threw rocks at police cars and officers, burned vehicles, shut down freeways, and lobbed Molotov cocktails. But President Trump will never allow mob rule to prevail in America. The most basic duty of government is to preserve law and order, and this administration embraces that sacred responsibility. Democrats like Governor Gavin Newsom and Mayor Karen Bass shamefully failed to meet their sworn obligations to their citizens. They didn't have the courage to do the right thing and protect law-abiding Californians from rioters. That's why President Trump deployed the National Guard and mobilized Marines to end the chaos and restore law and order. The mob violence is being stomped out. The criminals responsible will be swiftly brought to justice. And the Trump administration's operations to arrest illegal aliens are continuing unabated. When the initial immigration enforcement actions took place on June 6th, Mayor Bass took to social media to say she was deeply angered by what has taken place. Mayor Bass then embarked on one of the most outrageous campaign of lies this country has ever seen from an elected official, blaming President Trump and brave law enforcement officers for the violence. Governor Newsom claimed that immigration enforcement actions were causing chaos. That's how radical Democrats have become. Mayor Bass and Governor Newsom fanned the flames and demonized our brave ICE officers. Instead of defending their city and their state, Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom claimed that in order for the riots and the violence to stop, ICE needed to leave and immigration raids must end. In other words, the position of the Democrat Party is that the federal government is not allowed to enforce our laws and to arrest and deport illegal alien criminals. They're attempting to use a violent mob as a weapon against their own constituents to prevent the enforcement of immigration law. This is deeply un-American and morally reprehensible. And let this be an unequivocal message to left-wing radicals in other parts of the country who are thinking about copycatting the violence in an effort to stop this administration's mass deportation efforts. You will not succeed. Any lawlessness will only strengthen this president's resolve to defend the majority of Americans who want to live their lives peacefully, free from the fear of violent criminal illegal aliens. As President Trump said, order will be maintained and illegal aliens will be expelled from our country. Alex, good to see you today.
Good to see you, Caroline. Thank you. You mentioned foreign flags being blown during these protests. There are protest activities being organized for this weekend. Part of it are Democrats saying they want to reclaim the American flag. It's also being titled No King's Day. Does the president see himself as a king, and does the White House expect to see American flags being flown during these protests this weekend?
The president views himself as the president of the United States of America. This is a constitutional republic, and we want to see all of our citizens be proud of the country in which they are given the privilege and the blessing to live. And I think that those images of foreign flags being waved by illegal criminals and by violent rioters in the face of cars blowing up and of flames in the city. I have photos of that here to show you. With this violence and destruction that occurred is an image that Governor Gavin Newsom owns. This is his city, and President Trump saw these images and he said that is not going to be accepted or tolerated, and hence why he deployed the National Guard and United States Marines who have helped to quell that violence.
The president said yesterday that paid insurrectionists were behind or involved in the protests in Los Angeles. Does the White House have any more details about who they believe is paying these protesters?
The president spoke about this last night when he returned from Fort Bragg, because frankly, the president has a lot of common sense. And if you look at some of the imagery that we have received from the Department of Homeland Security and ICE and law enforcement who are on the ground, you will see boxes and boxes of very professionalized masks and rioting equipment being dropped off for these protesters. So it's a good question the president is raising, and one we are looking into, about who is funding these insurrectionists and these rioters and these protesters and these illegal criminals. And I have updates for you on the numbers, by the way. Since June 6th, there have been 330 illegal aliens that have been arrested as part of these riots in Los Angeles. 113 of those illegal aliens had prior criminal convictions. And overall, and this includes arrests of American citizens, there's been 157 people arrested for assault and obstruction-related charges, including the attempted murder of a police officer with a Molotov cocktail. So who is funding these illegal aliens who are coming in with this very professional riot gear? It's a question everyone in this room who cares about truth should be asking. And we encourage your help in trying to get to the bottom of that question. Indina.
Thank you, Caroline. About Elon Musk, he issued an apology this morning. Has the president accepted the apology, or does he think it's too little too late?
The president acknowledged the statement that Elon put out this morning, and he is appreciative of it, and we are continuing to focus on the business of the American people.
And has the administration started a review of Musk's government contracts, something that the president said he's considering?
What do you mean by that?
Has the administration started a review of the contracts that Musk and his companies currently have?
No efforts have been made on that front as far as I'm aware.
And just one more, if I may, on just everything sort of we've seen so far with the president's response to the LA protests. There is criticism that seems to suggest that the president responded the way he did because it was a deliberate, calculated attempt to sort of shift focus away from his feud with Musk. How would you respond to that?
That the president responded to the LA riots, condemning the violence
from Musk.
It's an incredibly disingenuous attack. The president saw images of Border Patrol and ICE agents being hailed with rocks and Molotov cocktails. He saw vehicles being burned to the ground with illegal aliens flying foreign flags, and that's what prompted the president to have this response that has clearly worked, because last night in Los Angeles, you didn't see many of those images. And I would add the governor and the mayor need to actually do more. Caitlin.
Caroline, 2 questions for you.
Sure.
Over the weekend, Secretary Noem sent a memo to the Pentagon asking Secretary Hegseth to have and direct the military that's on the ground in LA to arrest and detain what she said were lawbreakers. Is the president okay with that? And under what authority would the members of the military be able to arrest people inside the United States?
I can't speak for a letter that came from the Department of Homeland Security. I can't speak for the president and what's currently happening on the ground now. And as you know, the president federalized the National Guard under U.S. Code 10, which he has the authority to do. And our United States Marines and the National Guardsmen and women who are on the ground right now are helping to create a peaceful environment for ICE and Border Patrol, who were being, again, hailed with rocks, who were being violently and viciously attacked. They needed reinforcements, and so our United States Marines who are on the ground are providing those reinforcements to ensure the environment is peaceful so that these raids and deportations can continue.
But he realizes they can't actually arrest people unless he invokes the Insurrection Act, which, I mean, seemingly was not something that was in Secretary Noem's memo a clear distinction she did not make there.
Again, you're trying to conflate a letter that was sent to the Department of Homeland Security to the president's legal authority. The president understands the legal authority that he invoked, and that's the current situation right now.
When it comes to federalizing the National Guard, what is the specific criteria that the president is using for when he's deciding to do that, and in which states?
The president was asked and answered this yesterday. He wants to see an end to the chaos and the violence. He doesn't want to see law enforcement officers being attacked. He wants to see peace. He wants law-abiding Californians to be able to bring their kids to school, to be able to go to work without seeing this violence in the streets. That's what the president's hoping for, and that's why he's taken this action. Jasmine.
Thanks so much, Caroline. The president warned that any protests on Saturday would be met with force. Can you clarify what kind of protest President Trump does support or find acceptable?
The president absolutely supports peaceful protests. He supports the First Amendment. He supports the right of Americans to make their voices heard. He does not support violence of any kind. He does not support assaulting law enforcement officers who are simply trying to do their job. It's very clear for the president what he supports and what he does not. Unfortunately for Democrats, that line has not been made clear, and they've allowed this unrest and this violence to continue, and the president has had to step in.
One question. So if there were peaceful protests on Saturday for the militant parade, President Trump would allow that?
Of course the president supports peaceful protests. What a stupid question. Go ahead. Sure.
Thanks, Caroline. You were just asked about the First Amendment rights issues. In the president's comments yesterday, though, he just said protesters would be strongly dealt with. In your list before, you referred to insurrectionists, rioters, and protesters together. Obviously, they're quite different from your earlier answer. I'm struck by the fact that the president has not at any point said the most important thing here is to protect the First Amendment rights of peaceful protesters. So I'm wondering, where in his hierarchy of interests does he place that? Is the First Amendment protection the most important? Is stopping violence most important? Why is he not out saying all peaceful protesters will be protected?
I think two things can be important at the same time. And the president, as I just answered, supports the right of Americans to peacefully protest. He supports the First Amendment. But that is not the majority of the behavior that we have seen taking place in Los Angeles. We have seen mobs of violent rioters and agitators assaulting law enforcement officers, assaulting our federal immigration authorities. And we have seen, as I said, this goes back to what this administration is trying to do and accomplish, and that's enforcing law and order in our nation's communities. And it's removing public safety threats from communities in Los Angeles.
You're saying the majority have not been peaceful, the majority have been violent.
I just read for you the arrest numbers. We've arrested nearly 400 illegal aliens alone, just illegal aliens who have been arrested in these riots since June 6th, since they began.
Thousands of people on the streets.
Yeah, and we've had hundreds of people who have assaulted law enforcement officers. Are you saying that that's that's appropriate behavior?
No,
Are you
no,
saying
I'm not
that
saying
the
that at all.
president
I'm
shouldn't
just
take
trying
action?
to figure out.
The Democrat governor and the Democrat mayor of Los Angeles have failed their citizens. And the majority of Americans, the majority of Californians do not want to see law enforcement officers being assaulted in the streets. And thankfully, the president took action and stepped in to protect our federal law enforcement agents, to protect federal buildings, to protect the federal mission of deporting illegal criminals off of our streets. And that mission will continue every day as far as we're concerned. Thank you, guys.